Welcome back to DIVEBOMB IndyCar podcast, and after a 3-week break of IndyCar, the racing was back on the streets of Long Beach as we have to review round 5-18 in the 2026 calendar. Can you believe we're round 5, by the way? Like, I know the calendar's been livened up a lot at the start of this year, but like, we're almost a third of the way through. This is a ridiculous rate that we're going at.
Yeah, but it's kind of nice, isn't it? Like,
I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Keep the racing coming.
Yeah, this is what we've been crying out for. And I mean, it's going to end with a flurry as well. So I guess it's maybe going to feel... Is it going to feel quiet at any point? It might not really. Like, I kind of like...
Well, this is the quiet time, really, isn't it? We have 3 weeks off and we're having 3 weeks off again.
Yeah, I kind of like that obviously May is just May. Like, we can now... Long Beach is done and we go off to the Indy 500 Open Test, Indy GP, and then it's the fortnight of the 500, which is... It's nice. It's nice not to, like, leave Long Beach and then you're starting May with Barber or something that focuses is fully on Indy. And yeah, dare I say, I think we're more excited for what's to come than what we saw on Sunday.
I mean, I guess it only gets quiet in the summer when the World Cup's on, which is quite unusual for IndyCar because usually we speak about it being busy in the summer. I guess now Iowa's lost a race and etc. You don't have like the 5 races in 4 weeks that you used to have. Instead, you have that at the end of the season, which is going to be chaotic, but we'll come to that much later on in the year. But here to review the Grand Prix of Long Beach, which once again, copy and paste, was won by Álex Palou. His first win in Long Beach, but his third win this season in 5 races and his 11th in the last 22 races, which backdates the start of the 2025 season. Also, dominant run of form for Palou continues. He retakes the lead of the championship from Carl Kirkwood, despite Kirkwood having a pretty decent run. And once Palou got onto the lead, like is always the case, there's no looking back. Like, he's out completely in class of his own. Obviously, this one, as we'll get into, maybe was a bit more down to his pit crew on the basis that he got the victory, but ultimately everyone speaks about it. The 10 team is not good just because of Palou, but they always nail the strategy and they always nail the pit stops. And we saw that perfectly on Sunday of that. The 10 team isn't just Palou, it's everybody in that team, and that's why they are so consistent. It's not just the brilliance of Palou, but one of the biggest boxes that he didn't have ticked in his IndyCar career. There's not many left for him to tick off at this point, but one of the few he had remaining, he's finally done. And his assertive self is certainly back. We thought maybe after Phoenix that, oh my goodness, this could get a bit interesting, but very quickly Álex Palou has reminded us who he is if we have somehow forgotten.
Yeah, I mean, he leads the standings despite having crashed out of a race after only 5 races, which is, yeah, I mean, it says it all, doesn't it, really? Like, as much as obviously he doesn't have like the 60+ point lead he had going into May last year, he still is here having not finished a race worse than second. Obviously, yes, of course, the DNF, but 1 second place, 3 wins. It is eerily familiar, like three of the first 5 races winning. And I mean, the stats are ridiculous. Like 11 of the last 22 races dating back to the start of last season. He had 11 race wins, I'm pretty sure, coming into that season, and was a 3-time champion at that point. But he's doubled that tally in a season and a quarter, basically, which is just utterly absurd. Like, I mean, it was posed to him in the post-race press conference that I think he's been on the podium in over half of his races with Ganassi. I think it's 47 out of 89, which is, again, insane. And it was funny that Palou's reaction was hilarious because it was that classic, like, humble kind of the humility that you get from him, where he's kind of just trying very hard to laugh it off, but he knows, like, yeah, this is bloody incredible. And I think you're very much right that this was the perfect embodiment of why not only is Palou a modern great, but this is also one of the all-time great team driver combinations, because Palou was in the position, it was very hard to overtake. He might not have got past Rosenqvist. Obviously, we're not to know what was going to happen if the final pit cycle was under green, but yeah, I mean, they absolutely nailed it in the pits when it really mattered. And yeah, this was like also like completely emblematic of this inevitable air that we always talk about around Palou, that just there's always a way. Like, even if it felt like on this occasion he was really stuck behind a very impressive Felix Rosenqvist, there's still just a way that they managed to gain that edge. And I don't think it's even like Rosenqvist had a disastrous stop there, but they've got the best pit position because they performed so well in the previous race, and it's like it's just a complete knock-on effect, isn't it? And yeah, amazing. And there's a real hilarious kind of familiarity to that. Let's go! We hear on the radio after every race, and it's like, yeah, for those who perceive this as boring, that must be pretty haunting. But this continues to be pretty damn incredible.
Yeah, I was about to say that. Like, the small things all add up. Him taking pole and Barber not basically won the race in Long Beach, but it's been a quite helping factor into winning a race in Long Beach, and that's the kind of continued success you see of Álex Palou. And like, it kind of feels like it doesn't really matter where he starts in the fast six, as long as he's there, he's somehow going to find a way to get into the lead, and from that point, just build a gap. And it's not quite as you said, the standard it is last year, but I think the opposition, we said this right at the start of the season, you can't afford Palou to get a quick start to the year, because otherwise you won't see him again. If you want any sort of championship battle, you kind of have to keep him pegged into the month of May, and hope in the summer where there's a lot more ovals and there's a lot of new tracks that maybe something might crop up. But ultimately, yes, he's had that off weekend at Phoenix, and yes, the points gap is only 17, not 62, whatever it was. But he heads to the GP with double defending winner there. Maybe triple defending winner, I can't remember. He's won there a lot recently. Indy 500 defending winner. Detroit, very successful there previously. It was punted out last year. And you go into places like Road America, Mid-Ohio, Portland. You can't let him get away, and it feels like it's starting to happen. So competition needs to keep him pegged back if there's any chance of him not walking to a 5th IndyCar title.
It's interesting. I got the impression he felt there was an asterisk over this win purely for the fact that second pit cycle and what was a kind of surefire 2-stop strategy did come under yellow, and meant that it was a kind of head-to-head battle, and him being, having that clean in and out was helpful. But I don't know, I still kind of would have fancied, if that was under green, them to have extended a lap further, which obviously didn't happen the first time. It was kind of head-to-head, and Meyer Shank pretty much equaled what Ganassi and the 10 crew did in the pits. But I don't know, I still would have fancied Palou doing something, maybe doing a lap overcut. And I think Rosenqvist had a pretty handy gap, actually, more handy than I thought it was at the time, or remembered it being. But yeah, I still would have fancied going onto the primary tyres, which Rosenqvist was kind of dreading running, and they're obviously Palou's bread and butter, and he's an absolute just devil on those primary tyres. I kind of would have fancied him maybe to jump ahead anyway. It would have depended whether that happened in the pit sequence or whether he would have had to work for the pass. But yeah, anyway, surged to the win in pretty emphatic fashion. It was a very commanding stint on those blacks, and ultimately you give him an inch and he'll take a mile and some.
So Palou won 8 races last year. He's already won 3 races within the first 5. Is he going to beat, equal, or have less of a tally than he did 12 months ago? What do you think?
I mean, what's he trending for? He's trending for
he's
9
trending
for about 10 wins at the moment.
Yes. Yeah, he's trending UA. Yes, definitely.
Yeah, I think it would be tough to say that Palou would, maybe even win one of those short over races given the competition. But particularly, on road courses, I just don't see how anyone beats him really, unless something goes very wrong for him. Think back to last year, it was Mid-Ohio when he made that little error. And what was the other road course race he didn't win?
Portland.
Oh yeah, Portland, which was power, wasn't it?
Pretty level pegging, yeah.
Yeah, that was the one time where it felt like maybe, competitively speaking, he wasn't the.
But he had the championship wrapped on by then. Or no, that was when he wrapped it up at, but it was basically a long gone by that point. But
yeah, it's a good point actually.
There are still 5 road courses left this year. We've only done 1.
Yeah, I think he'll. I don't see how anyone stops him, and even on the street courses, Kirkwood has won 2 of the past 3. He won for pole last year, and Palou's. They just didn't quite have the package really. Andretti, which was a bit of a question mark given how they've started the season on the street courses. So. Yeah, interesting. That's 2 of the 3 street courses Palou's won. So
that's a very diplomatic answer. So what's your prediction early on?
Yeah, he's gonna beat.
He's gonna beat it.
I just don't think anyone's close to him. I really, which is a funny thing to say because I guess Rosenqvist was kind of close, but as soon as Palou was out front with clean air, he was clearly just.
But do you not feel that feels maybe a little bit closer than it did last year?
Well, I wouldn't say much, but ultimately. Long Beach had things gone slightly differently. That's Rosenqvist's win. If Barber things go slightly differently, that could be Lundgaard's win.
Yeah, but Palou didn't win that race last year, and I know he was kind of in a bit of a fight with Kirkwood at points, but I think ultimately that was better from Palou than we've seen ever at Long Beach. Obviously, it was. He won the race, but
Palou's Long Beach record is good. His average finish is.
There's 3.5 or something. Yeah. No, you're right. But he's also never got over the line to win. So, and St. Pete this year, obviously won it last year, but this year he's absolutely thumped the field. So yeah, I mean, yeah, okay, maybe Lundgaard could have had a bit of an answer at Barber if it wasn't for the slow stop. But at the same time, Palou got kind of pretty unfortunate with, getting stuck in traffic because of an unfortunate, kind of the strategy panning out in a very different way to anyone really expected. So that was a bit of a freak thing. So I don't think the field is that much closer, to be honest. I think we've kind of got a bit of a fake impression, if I'm being frank, on road and street courses at least. But I don't know whether. Do you think he'll do it?
I mean, I look at the remaining races, and I think he'll probably win the GP. I think he'll probably win at least one of Road American Mid Ohio. He'll probably win a Portland. He'll probably win Laguna Seca, knowing his record there. He'll probably win at least one oval, I reckon. So that's already 8. So, and let's say he probably wins either Washington or Markham. So yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Probably wins half the races.
There's one more race for him this year.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you kind of have to assess where things stand after the month of May. I think if Kirkwood wins and Palou second in this race, the perspective is a lot different. And it's kind of weird that Kirkwood coming fourth is a bit of a disappointment, but he seems the guy who is the closest, just based on his current form, really, and based on the fact that Long Beach was kind of one of his most successful track, and just when that Palou hadn't won it. But I guess it's kind of the confidence that we maybe had before that Kirkwood could at least put up a fight. Maybe he's a little bit wimmed, at least in the short term, on the basis that his Long Beach maybe wasn't as good as we hoped, and Palou won yet again. But I think you do have to wait till after May is complete. Yes, the GP is a happy underground. I can't remember who said this. It might be Lundgaard, it might be somebody else. But you head into the 500, and does Palou take it more conservatively because he's got that 500 when he's now thinking championship, or does he risk it in favour of second? That's an interesting point. Like, I don't know if he thinks like that. I don't think he really does, because everything he does seems to be very calculated. But I think you kind of get to May, the Indy 500's done, though. That line is drawn and everyone is thinking championship. I think that's kind of when we really need to make our assessments on if he is beatable or not.
I mean, are we now talking, is he beatable? We've just been talking about, is he going to eclipse his 8 wins of last year? He's definitely not. No one's like, this could come back to bite me, and I guess people will thank me for it, because I mean, we've cursed it to make an exciting competitive season, but he's not going to get beaten over the course of the season.
I know, but positivity.
like don't get me wrong, like Kirkwood's had a very impressive start to the season. Like, I know we've spoken in recent years, like, okay, that first year with Andretti he had the peaks, the next year he had the consistency without the peaks, last year he kind of knitted it all together. This year he's continued that knitted together kind of season, but elevated it again. Like, he's perennially in the top 5 at this start point of the season. But yeah, I just think it was a weird weekend for Andretti. Like, obviously we've seen them be so kind of omnipotent on street courses, and I mean, Power had a good day, but he was 6th, and then obviously had the drive-through penalty after hitting a member of Colette's pit crew. Kirkwood, he almost made inroads on Dixon for the podium late on, but even while the driver who was ahead of him kind of flip-flopped a little bit, he kind of was just 4th all day, and that was kind of his weekend. So I don't know where that sort of regression's come from. Ericsson, I mean, obviously it was a disappointing weekend for him. Like, he failed to transfer to the Fast 12 after a pair of front rows on street courses. Then, his day ends in a pretty kind of pathetic, unfortunate, sad way for him by seemingly hybrid issue, electrical issues. That was unfortunate, but it was a kind of ended a bit of a damp squib of a weekend anyway. But yeah, I just think this is, it's encouraging consistency from Kirkwood, but when you've got a driver that is just equally consistent, but just 1 or 2 positions higher, like Palou, who's literally 1st or 2nd every single race, what can you do about it? It feels like we're talking a bit like the conversations we had about O'Ward late last season, where it was yeah, he's probably having a championship year in a year where you've not got someone this unbelievable, but you've just got to continue to tip your hat to him. I don't know what, it must be so hard for the competition, someone like Kirkwood, who has started the season so well, to not get just completely demoralized by it, because it's ridiculous, quite frankly.
I mean, it's an interesting point, Andretti, because I guess a lot of people went into this weekend expecting them to be the favourites just based on Long Beach record and how they showed street courses this year. And I think it is a little bit of a disappointment. Kirkwood 4th is still a good result, but as I said a minute ago, based on his Long Beach record and the fact he's the other guy in a championship, he was the guy in a championship lead into the race, I think kind of just hope for a little bit more from him. on power side, it just seems so many small things are just having such a catastrophic impact. Like, he's 14th in the championship, obviously only one top 10 finish, which was his podium in Arlington. Like, ultimately, this was, I guess, slightly unfortunate, tighter pit boxes compared to most races. Obviously, clearly hit him, but it seemed like a major hit. Obviously, we hope Collette's rear left changer is okay. Barber, you obviously have that qualifying crash, no fault of his own. Phoenix, obviously, that tiny collision of Rasmussen means he finishes 16th, and obviously St. Pete was a bit of a disaster weekend around for him. But it's just, things just aren't quite going right, and it's not always his fault. Like, as we've seen in the last two races, which is really a shame. And just to touch on Ericsson briefly, like, it feels like every time he's about to turn over a new leaf, you have a race like this, and it's like, okay, well, if somebody looking to keep their seat back, it isn't good enough. Like, you see Kirkwood's consistency. And yes, Power's not consistent, but at least he's showing to be on a similar level to Kirkwood pretty regularly. Ericsson just seems a tad off both of them, and it's not a new thing. And we come in after Barber, another top 10 finish after quiet day, which is what he wanted for. And then Long Beach street track, he was pretty good there throughout his career, and he's just nowhere again. And that's kind of frustrates me out of Ericsson. It's just that inconsistency race to race when it finally looks like something's happened to maybe put him into a good stride.
Yeah, and that will cost him his drive ultimately if it kind of persists in this way, because I still don't think it's been a bad start to the season for him. I've not got the points to hand, but yeah, it's just this sort of weekend is, I know ultimately, like, he may still have finished like just inside the top 10, and we'd be saying like, okay, that's better, that's more like Ganassi Ericsson. But yeah, you've just got to say he's still, just the way in which he maybe trailed his teammates a little bit. On the power side, like, I'm not worried at all. Like, I think he's been close enough to Kirkwood, to be honest, which this early on is like fine. Like, Kirkwood is clearly that team's guy now. And yeah, just to round off on Andretti with Kirkwood, like, a traditional championship day just isn't enough at the moment. And that's kind of what he's producing. And yeah, I think he'll just be ruining the competition and the era that he seems to be finding himself within.
It's like the greats in every sport, like, you don't get a title because there's just somebody else who is that guy in the generation. And like, Álex Palou is going to prevent people from Carl Kirkwood, Pato O'Ward, Colton Herta, Christian Lundgaard, etc. Scott McLaughlin from winning an IndyCar championship because he's literally unbeatable.
Kyle Kirkwood and Pato O'Ward have turned out to be like the Andy Murray and Stan Wawrinka tennis equivalent in IndyCar because you've got Palou, who's just like the Djokovic on steroids, to be quite frank.
Let's touch on Felix Rosenqvist. I mean, he's obviously worth a mention because he probably was a standout guy this weekend. I mean, I don't want to say I called it, but Long Beach qualifying demon. Did I? Did I not say that literally 3 weeks ago? And you still had the cheek to not put him in your fast six.
Yeah, I mean, I do regret that now. Like, I mulled over it, but I just looked over him because he'd had a pretty poor start to the season, and that still rings true. Like, he had a poor start to the season. He was very clear on that. Like, hadn't been like a catastrophe, but I think he finished 12th twice, 13th, and just outside the top 15 as well. And he came into press on Friday after practice and just spoke a bit about how he just felt with a very relentless start to the season. Obviously, 4 races in 5 weeks. It was kind of started the season off on a bad foot, and kind of a bad flow was the way that he described it, and couldn't kind of break out of that momentum. So I think having this little gap before Long Beach was a bit of a welcome just break, really, for them to just reset and reflect, because obviously his first 2 years with Meyer-Shank have been defined by him absolutely flying out of the blocks, and this has very much kind of been the opposite. But yeah, this weekend felt like a real return to form, because I mean Rosenqvist spoke about it. This team has started the season well. He feels like they've very much continued to make a step forward from it was very impressive last season, finishing 6th in the standings, the best that they've ever managed. But yeah, just something wasn't working. They were missing a few tenths here and there, and that just completely came back this weekend. I don't know, exactly what they found, but yeah, 2 poles in 3 years at Long Beach, very, very impressive. Another podium as well. Obviously, I think very much deserved to win this race. It was unfortunate ultimately that yellow came out and made it that head-to-head in the pits. And yes, okay, as I've said before, like, we don't know how it would have panned out if it happened in the green, but he controlled that race expertly, really, and didn't at all crumble under the pressure of Palou, managed it really well. And yeah, a fantastic weekend from Rosenqvist, and probably now I imagine it would be a springboard for his season.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really fault him ultimately. He had a superb weekend all round. We'll get onto the qualifying format a little bit later on this episode, just if you're wondering about that now. Obviously, a little bit panned out a little bit differently to how it did in Arlington. But you'll see Rosenqvist on pole again. Obviously, he's racking it up, especially at Long Beach, as the Long Beach qualifying demon. And, you know, he did exactly what he needed to do, controlled the start very well, no problems at all. And then he kind of maintained quite a nice gap to Palou throughout the race, like, you know, kind of that 2-3 second gap where, should the final stop have happened under green, that margin would have been there for him, unless Palou did some otherworldly overcut to overtake him, which, I mean, you don't know how things would have panned out. But, I mean, it's unfortunate. Like, it feels like Rosenqvist and Shank have been knocking on the door of a victory for literally years on end now, but they just can't get across the line. I mean, it's only Rosenqvist's second podium at Shank, obviously finished second at Road America last year to Palou. Feels like same as Lundgaard, isn't it? Mostly all the Scandinavians finished second to Palou. Every single week it seems like, but you know it's coming. Like the teams have lack consistency, I think, which is ironic considering using their other car. But the team kind of lack consistency between both cars every single race. But like the pace is there, it's just maybe execution lets them down. And I mean, I guess it is execution which did kind of let them down from victory. But again, you can't really fault them. I think that's more how good the 10 team are, as opposed to, you know, that the 60 team did a bad pit stop, for example.
It's an interesting point you make that, because Armstrong did have a very quiet weekend. I wonder whether it was poised for a possible Armstrong ability call, but yeah, it seemed to final 10 laps just disappeared into the pits. I think they said maybe he had a bit of a tyre problem, so that was unfortunate. But yeah, you're right actually. Like it feels like there's one car will be on a high and then the other maybe will be a bit anonymous. That's how the season really started.
They're both like kind of fringes of the top 10. Like it feels like when you see one competing top 5, the other one isn't there.
Yeah, because Armstrong's the driver who very much has started the season as a guy who's stolen some of the headlines from Shank. But yeah, you're right. Like the win is coming, and I really wouldn't be surprised for either of those drivers if it was to come this year. I mean, mad to think like they haven't won in basically 5 years since Castro Neves won the 500, and yeah, the fact that it is only Rosenqvist's second podium feels undeservedly little.
Wrong. Yeah, like, we said this at Low Road America last year. It's just wrong.
Yeah,
it still feels wrong. Yeah,
weird. But yeah, well done. Great drive.
Shank must be the first team on this podcast to have all their drivers have a podcast full nickname. The ability and the Long Beach qualifying demon, that's sticking now. Like we get to Nashville, it's like, yep, Long Beach qualifying demon was in 4th.
What about Castro Neves? We're going to have to grapple with that in May.
Yes, we'll have to come up with Castro Neves. Well, he's got a traditional name as a spider, but we have to create our own one, which is podcast relevant. But let's round out the podium. Scott Dixon obviously finished third. His first podium of the year was very Dixon of last year-esque. He ended up in third, like he did in the standings, with no real explanation how he got there. Like he qualified in 6th, was it in the end, or 5th?
Yeah, it was 6th, yeah.
And literally ran there the entire time, and the last pit stop was another big winner and went from 6th or 5th to 3rd in the pits. And I mean, that was it. Finished 3rd in the end. Very Dixon last year, wasn't it?
I loved his description of it. He said it was a blah day. And yeah, it was a strange one. Like, this was the first time he'd even transferred to the Fast 12 this season. Fox reported actually the day after that he turned his dash off in qualifying so that he couldn't see his delta, which basically, because he was getting in his own head basically about his delta, and that was possibly being towards the detriment of his qualifying performance. And I mean, was that the reason he was so quick? I don't know. Ganassi was strong across all cars. Simpson qualified 9th, finished 10th, which was a good run for him as well. But that was just an interesting insight. Like, this guy's a 6-time champion. He's 45 years old and still making these little adjustments to try and make gains where, yeah, he has been kind of off the pace in qualifying. And even in races, like it's not been a particularly good start to the season for Dixon, who was obviously disappointed with the way that last season panned out as well. But yeah, I think he must have just had an incredible final pit stop, to be honest, to leap to 3rd, because he wasn't in that picture at all until that caution happened, and he suddenly just appeared out behind Palou and Rosenqvist.
What's that start running where it's like Dixon hasn't taken a pole outside of Indianapolis in like 10 years or something ridiculous? But he's
on a road or street course, at least.
No, I think it's he took a pole at Texas, but he inherited that because he was the championship leader and it rained out. So he hasn't had a pole outside of Indy in like 10 years, but he's been in the Fast Six like something like 46 times since. And I think he's been in the front row like almost 10 times or something ridiculous, and he's never taken pole since. From the crazy statistics like I've heard in a long time. So I think I can't remember, it might be Chad Smith if you want to get the full stat on X, because I mean there's a whole chart for it. It's insane, but that's just Scott Dixon qualifying stat of the day. Again, just to touch on Simpson, P10, second top 10 of the season. Like, it's been a bit of a quiet year for Simpson, I'd say, thus far. And I would say this was quite a quiet run, all things considered. But again, it's kind of the slow progress that it's been making throughout his IndyCar career. And like, I think it says a lot now that a top 10 finish isn't really a surprise. Like, I think there's a couple of top 5s, top 10s last year where I kind of felt like he maybe lucked into them on strategy or whatever. But this is just sheer pace. He's finishing top 10 now, which is ultimately encouraging. And we've said this before, that he got transferred into that seat too early, but now he's got some experience under his belt and maybe he's a bit more mature as a driver. But he's starting, the improvements are clear there. He just needs to show us on a more regular basis.
Yeah, I think we're probably seeing now the rewards, though. I know you say possibly moved into the seat too early. We're probably now maybe starting to see why they did it. I know he probably was too young and it was a bit of a baptism of fire, but you know, if they'd say elevated him last year, okay, he might have had a better rookie year, but would he have been in this position to be kind of just finishing on merit in the top 10 like this? Not sure. It's still not an incredible day, but this is much more like what we saw last season, or what the trajectory of last season suggested should come from this season. So yeah, an encouraging day for Simpson, and a much better weekend all round on a street course from Ganassi, where Palou has been kind of just miles ahead of his teammates really in the first couple, as far as I recall anyway. It's kind of obviously been that just gaggle of the 3 Andrettis and Palou, and then everyone else quite considerably behind.
At this point, we go through the running order as we usually do, just touch on some of the other key drivers who do want to have a mention of. Obviously, Palou was victorious out of Rosenqvist and Dixon. Kirkwood was in 4th. O'Ward in 5th. Obviously started on the front row, got overtaken by Palou on lap 2 and kind of fell away a little bit in the pit cycles. Obviously, it's still a 4th top 5 finish in 5 races to start the year for O'Ward, but still no podium. So again, we said this with Kirkwood, like, in the grand scheme of things, in any other non-Álex Palou year, you'd be thinking, looking at that start to the season, it's like, pretty good going. Who was in the championship mix? And yet he is over a race victory off Palou at this point, despite finishing the top 5 4 times so far this year. But I mean, it's a bit of a worryingly recurring theme for McLaren. I mean, maybe, well, I guess it's not hugely concerning, but they have the pace of the top 5 week in, week out, not necessarily in both cars. But between Lundgaard and O'Ward, one of them seems to always be in and around the top 5, but they just don't seem to have the pace of the top dogs at every single weekend. It never feels like they roll off very well either.
Yeah, that's a really good point. He is in a very weird window, O'Ward, where, yeah, very consistent. Obviously, Barber being a bit of an anomaly, but just can't break kind of the ground that we expected probably Aaron McLaren to kind of surge into this season in terms of, yeah, I guess more regularly bringing the challenge to Palou. Yeah, strange one. Like Lundgaard, I mean, I guess a good opportunity to get onto him as well. Like, you know, he wasn't, basically on that point that you made about rolling off, like he wasn't short on pace necessarily in practice. Not that he was like front running as such, but he just didn't feel very comfortable. And then qualifying was basically just what we've seen from him all season, makes it into the Fast 12 and then doesn't factor at all in the mix towards, you know, fighting for the Fast 6. And his race day this time around was not kind of the same recovery we've seen. It was pretty average. And then around just beyond the midway point, I think got a puncture and was forced onto an extra stop, pretty inopportune moment, couldn't have made it, kind of with an outlandish fuel save, and then ended 20th.
He got unlucky because the caution came out like 10 laps later, so didn't even get the benefit of fresher tyres, for example. So.
Exactly. I know we've actually got a couple of sound bites from Lundgaard, both race week and post-practice on Friday as well. I'll just play in the post-practice ones first because it's kind of relevant to what I was mentioning there, just about the process that they do go through after kind of these seemingly quite regular, tricky Friday practice sessions, as well as just his thoughts on where Aaron McLaren kind of stack up in this pecking order on street courses, road courses, street courses, particularly compared to the likes of Andretti and Ganassi. Obviously, when you have a practice session that you come away from maybe not being super happy, what is the process, I guess, now going into tonight and then into tomorrow in terms of trying to kind of turn that around and be a bit happier in the car going into qualifying?
Just, trying to figure out what the issues really are. I felt like a very disconnected car. I didn't necessarily think I just had one problem. I had multiple issues, just trying to figure out the balance in kind of the slower speed, but also the medium speed corners. They seem to be different axles of the car that I was struggling with. So I think we will sit down, analyze, understand kind of which axle to fix first, which one's going to be the pure lap time finder, and then from there, see if we need to make any changes going into qualifying or not.
And then when you kind of look more generally, obviously all of your best results at Aaron McLaren, most of your podiums have come on road courses, but how do you feel the street course package kind of stacks up? Obviously Andretti are very strong looking at the field, but where are Aaron McLaren kind of in that pecking order in terms of how it feels?
I think we're a better race car on street courses than we're a qualifying car. But again, I mean, we know the Andrettis are strong on street courses. I don't think that comes as a surprise to anybody. I don't necessarily see all the Ganassis there. We definitely see Palou. And then the Penske's are there one race, and then they're not the next race. So I would almost say that we're a little bit in that category. We definitely have some work to do to catch up to the 10 car and then all three Andrettis.
And then, as Archie mentioned, we have another clip of Lundgaard from earlier on in the week. Now, it's two topics we've actually discussed on this episode already. One, is it demoralising for a competitor to keep on losing to Palou, especially in Lundgaard's case, who it feels like is always losing to Palou? We have that statistic running where Lundgaard's last 10 podiums have all been shared with Palou somehow. And on that aspect of qualifying, where that's something he needs to improve on and what he's going to do and what he's working on to make that step forward.
Hi Dave, hi Christian. Hope you're doing well. Obviously, as we saw in Barber and Club, a lot of other races who've been in the podium in recent years, it seems like you're always behind Álex on track, no matter when you get a good result. So as a competitor, when it's the same guy kind of beating you every single time, is that something that's slightly demotivating and frustrating, I guess? How can you overcome that?
Well, I almost, I wouldn't say it's demotivating. I'd almost say it's more motivating in a way, right? It definitely sucks. You're up there and you feel like you've had a great weekend, and it's just the same guy every time that's another step further up. But I think, we haven't helped ourselves this year on Saturdays to put ourselves in better positions. I think if we see Barber, if we would have started further up, we would have almost walked away with it quite easily. And I think that's the takeaway for us, that we're capable of producing great race cars on Sunday, but we need to be better on Saturdays to give ourselves a better chance against the 10 car. And you look at last year, I do personally believe that everybody is closer to the 10 car than last year. I think last year he was a step ahead of everybody, and and it almost looked easy, where I think this year he's under a little bit more pressure from multiple cars, which I think will make the difference on the long run.
When you say Saturdays as a focus, I remember you saying this after Barber and the race as well. So kind of how can you work on that? So something maybe that's stopping the team from executing strongly on Saturdays. What kind of can you do to kind of improve that performance?
Well, I think it's kind of reading the track progression, kind of the progression on setup changes throughout the weekend. I think we've taken some wrong turns, which is obviously in the chase. Like St. Pete, for example, was a very clear example. We were trying to chase a little bit of lap time going into qualifying. We went the wrong way on setup. We simply just undid it for Sunday, and the car was in a much better window. And it was kind of sort of similar to Arlington, where we weren't really that keen to do anything. We still did something going into qualifying. Again, it was the wrong way. We paid the price for it. We went back to where we were, at least similar to, and we were much better on Sunday. And then Barber comes around. We we were throwing everything at it all weekend. We weren't really able to find the pace, and in qualifying we didn't do anything, and we were very competitive in Q1, and the pace disappeared for Q2. So it is a very there's a lot of parts that really plays a part in it. I think it's not as simple as a yes and no answer, or it's this or it's that. I think we got to read the track progression better, and really have the right setup at the right time. And I think we've missed that for multiple different reasons. It's never the same reason. So it is a little tough, and I think that's, it's very mentally draining when you're putting in so much work and you're not seeing results from it.
Whilst we're touching on McLaren, I probably should also give a mention to Nolan Siegel. Obviously qualified last. He said he had some slight issue in qualifying where he wasn't able to get a run. Ends up being the race's biggest mover, gained 13 positions into 12, which is quite comfortably his best finish of the year. Obviously, still not really what you're looking for, but it's a positive trajectory, and it gives a bit more confidence this weekend that he can be a little bit more competitive compared to what we've seen in the first 4 races of the season. So Siegel said it himself, it's not the trophy they want, the biggest mover trophy, it's not where they want to be, but ultimately that is a positive trajectory for what he needs to do this season.
Yeah, raced well, raced cleanly. I think I would still raise some concern about the fact that he qualified 25th and was, he was the slowest in qualifying. There's no kind of beating around the bush, and that is a concern that he just does not have anything close. And I know we touched on Lundgaard struggling a bit in qualifying too, but he's got nowhere near the speed of his teammates, really, in the grand scheme of things. So that's a worry, but at least this is probably one of the best races we've seen from him in his couple of years in IndyCar, really. And it wasn't an entirely clean weekend. He had a bit of a crash in second practice. Not huge, but did damage the left side of the car. But yeah, I think just shoots of something at least. So a platform to go into May with, I guess.
Cool. We've deviated from our running order, so we get straight back into it with Scott McLaughlin in 6th place. A rather quiet weekend for McLaughlin, all things considered. Qualified 8th, finished 6th. One of those races, again, one of those drivers, sorry, where we didn't really see too much of them. But I guess it's a pretty decent result for McLaughlin, considering that Barber and Arlington were both pretty disastrous with crashes. Obviously, he crashed here in practice, not quite as significant. But I think it's kind of a result which is just good to kind of have a stable weekend, all things considered, considering kind of that little bit of a messy run he's been on at the minute.
That's exactly how I'd put it. I think it's a settling result for him, because it has been a very kind of unsettled couple of rounds, really, to kick off. Well, I know he obviously started the season pretty well in St. Pete, but kind of off the back of that, it's been a bit scruffy, obviously, with the qualifying crash in Arlington, the huge practice crash, having to go to the backup car and basically just putting him on the back foot for the whole Barber weekend. So yeah, the crash that he had in practice one, it wasn't that big, ended up in the tyre barriers, but it's quite amusing that the commentators were talking about the fact that it was so important for him to go through a weekend of avoiding error, and he literally crashes for the 3rd weekend in a row as they are making that point. So that wasn't ideal, but yeah, it was just the sort of weekend he needed just to stabilize things, because it has just been, I don't know, it's just felt like a start to the season that's kind of not entirely got rid of what was plaguing him last year.
And then he was ahead of David Malukas in 7th, his Penske teammate. And I feel like we're saying this for every race so far this year for Malukas. But yeah, once again, just another really quietly good weekend. Like, he's not making errors. He's qualifying really well. He's finishing pretty decently. Once again, another top 10 finish. I believe that's his 4th on the bounce. I mean, his 4th top 7 finish on the bounce. Obviously, St. Petersburg, we know what happened there. Lies 3rd in the standings. And yeah, just driving really maturely, qualifying really well, and he just looks so composed. We're saying this every week, but I think we deserve to mention it every week, because he's doing a very impressive job.
Yeah, I mean, like, compared to his teammates, who are once again very kind of up and down, which is, I think, what we kind of came into the season expecting Malukas might be like, given kind of what we saw at Foyt, given the fact he's still young, still raw, new to this big team, big pressure environment. But just none of that. And like, to be honest, like, this could have been an even better result. Like, he was really well poised in 4th place before that caution and the pit stops, and had red tires, softer tires to follow as well. And it was going to be a pretty interesting if he was still kind of in 4th, whether he could make inroads on the podium, maybe even chase down the win. I know, as we mentioned, like, passing was pretty tough, but yeah, I was pretty amazed to see that he's third in the standings. Like, no headlines, but that's precisely what we needed, really. I say no headlines, obviously got the pole and podium Phoenix, but not making generally huge. He's not the name on everyone's lips, but he's just having a very, I guess that word again, stable start to the year, which is exactly what he needed. And now we head into May, and you know what? Come to 500, I give him a genuine shot.
Yeah, in 8th place, another driver with another quietly good run in Graham Rahal. It's already his third top 10 in 5 races to start the year, which already matches his total for 2025. So, look, that's encouraging. We've spoken about the changes the team have made a lot, and he's been the one who seemed to really benefit that. And I don't think there's loads to say about Graham's race. At least I don't have anything much to say. Qualified in 10th, so once again made the fast 12. But yeah, these results are kind of picking up more consistently for Rahal, and it just seems that's 3 top 10s on 3 different track types as well, which I think is encouraging. So, but yeah, heading in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, he's been plagued by inconsistency during this kind of downward run, really, over the past, really getting on for 5 years now. But here we are, 5 rounds sitting inside the top 10 in points. Obviously, Indy's going to be key to, again, see like what sort of position they're in. I know, obviously, they're not most likely going to have the threat of bumping, given it looks very unlikely the field will get above 33. Jacob Abel been announced now. I think there are a lot of reports that Catherine Legg at AJ Foyt will probably be the final entry. So at least there's not that jeopardy for RLL, which I guess is settling for them in terms of obviously having Mick Schumacher as a rookie. I thought it was a pretty decent weekend, actually. Long Beach for Schumacher. He was plagued by a few issues through practice. Crucial time where he needs to learn this track that he's obviously never driven before, and I think he logged 3 laps in first practice, needed an engine change, and had a small crash quite early in the second of the group segments in second practice. So it was a little bit scruffy, but then to qualify 21st, not basically qualify slowest, which you probably would have said was an achievement given how disrupted his practice was, and then race his way to 17th wasn't too bad. I think Louis Foster seems to have a bit of a better weekend, like qualifying 17th. It's still not necessarily the heights we saw of last year, but he was in the top 10 inside the final 15 laps. But yeah, then, I mean, at least he gave us overtakes in the race where passing was pretty hard, but his tyre management seems to maybe be an issue. Again, kind of drops off a little bit. So there's a bit of inconsistency there within that RLL lineup, but at least on Rahal's side, where he has been kind of at the peak of a lot of that inconsistency in recent years, he's had a pretty strong start to the season, a lot better than we've seen in a little while now.
Yeah, I mean, Foster does really need a top 10 under his belt by, you kind of feel like, this stage of his career. Like, he is a year and a decent chunk into his second season now, and it feels like the pace is definitely there. As we say, it's just execution and race management, which he's obviously spoken to us a lot about as well, which is really letting him down. And once again, I mean, the top 10 was on the cards here, and he ended up 16th. And I mean, he was sitting duck in the last kind of 20 laps, which is weird because nobody else seemed to be. So obviously that needs to really be looked into. But going through the rest of the order, 9th was Rossi, ahead of Simpson and 10th already mentioned. Hauger was 11th. Better run from him. He's had a rough couple of races, so better run for Dennis Hauger there. Lola Siegel in 12th, ahead of Renus VK in 13th.
Just on VK and I guess Hauger as well. Like, I'm not going to come out and immediately say VK made a mistake by moving to JHR. I don't know what the ins and outs of that were, but I just feel like the early stages of the season, I think VK's had a pretty solid start to the season. Like, he made the fast 12 again. I just think the ceiling at JHR is lower than the ceiling at least on road and street courses. The ceiling at JHR is lower than the ceiling at Coin. I think we're seeing Hauger produce kind of performances that we semi sort of saw from VK last year. Like, obviously not quite the same heights, which is natural as a rookie, but this 11th is another very strong street course result after what was a challenging Barber. Whereas VK, like, you kind of look at 13th and think, I'm not sure he could have really managed much more than that. I just feel like whereas the shackles were off last year, he's had a very good start to this season, but it feels like he's just being held back ever so slightly, if you kind of get what I mean. So I'm interested to see how things develop, but I've not really seen like a big step forward from JHR this year, which makes me think like, yeah, you were a genius making this move.
I mean, I wonder how much he looks towards the month of May in that decision, because obviously we know he spoke to Daly about that, and Daly said Hunkels is very strong, and we know the situation him and Quinn were in last year, so I guess that's going to be a big teller of maybe his thinking there. Joseph Newgarden was 14th, who had... Look, Joseph Newgarden was the guy trying to bring some interest into the race, going on to a three-stop strategy early on, which the broadcast team got very excited about. It was kind of making it work, but it felt like as soon as you got into traffic, it would be pretty difficult, and that kind of proved to be the case. Was battling Marcus Armstrong on the outskirts of the top 10, and then locked up pretty badly, forced him to another pit stop, and the caution came out a couple of laps later, and ends up 14th for exactly where he started. After all that.
Yeah, I mean, it was he made things exciting at least. Probably made the race more fun for him because he could kind of push all out rather than kind of doing the fuel save, which was part of the reason why the race ended up being not the most entertaining thing ever. Yeah, kind of his own error squandered what realistically probably would have only just been a finish inside the top 10, which could he have done that without the dramas of having to go on this strategy anyway, maybe, but at least he tried something. But yeah, I think we obviously kind of thought after Phoenix, like, okay, Newgarden he's probably could probably be in the title picture here, but it's fallen a little bit already. Like, I mean, he's 6th, which is all right, but he's already 75 points behind Palou.
It's a bit like last year at this point where we were wondering how people are in certain positions, because if it was like outside of Phoenix, Newgarden's been nowhere all year and he's 6th in points. Like, it feels weird that O'Ward is ahead of Lundgaard in points, but I guess Lundgaard are pretty disastrous. Long Beach. I mean, it's just that kind of, yeah, like Rosenqvist has got one top 10 finish and he's 9th in points. So just that weird stage of the year. Rasmussen was 15th ahead of Foster, Schumacher and Ferrucci. Power was in 19th, which they got penalised for hitting Collette's personnel. Lundgaard was 20th, obviously mentioned his tyre issues as well. And then you round up with Grosjean, Collett, Robb, Armstrong, who, as we mentioned, had a problem, but did you say it was a tyre issue? But
I'm sure they said in the broadcast it was a tyre issue. He finished only a lap down, so he was able to get back out. So I would assume it was a tyre problem.
Cool. And then we end off with Marcus Action, as you said, with a mechanical issue. Right. Unsung hero of that bunch.
Oh, interesting. I need to get the running order before my phone's about to die with the running order. I will go... Interesting. I'll go for Kiffin Simpson.
Okay, cool. I was going to go for Graham Rahal.
Nice. I also would give a shout out to Malukas, just generally, because I know he's ultimately actually finished lower than he started, but that was owing to just falling in that pit cycle, which was unfortunate. So, do I go for Malukas? Yeah, I'm going to go for Malukas, actually. I think not enough is being made of the fact that he's 3rd in the standings, to be honest.
Okay, top 3 drivers of the weekend. I think the first 2 are fairly obvious. Rosenqvist and Palou. I would guess.
Rosenqvist above Palou.
Yeah, in my opinion,
that's what that was my thinking.
Third place is a bit more tougher because there's definitely nobody who's a super obvious standout here. Kirkwood maybe. I mean, it's hard to say because how much do you weight their position being based on that final pit stop, which ultimately was out of the driver's control. So
yeah, I mean, at least Kirkwood was the one who wasn't flip-flopping, and he was kind of just 4th all day. Probably had the pace for 3rd if it wasn't for passing being so tough. Yeah, I'm going to go for Kirkwood, I think.
Cool. Okay. Funny moments. I mean, there's always a few. When's there not a few? I mean,
yeah.
I'll start off with. Well, there's a few. Like I feel like we both know what our favourite one's going to be. But we'll start off with a few. Like Friday, there was a press conference with Lundgaard after practice, which we thought was a bit weird because he was 8th, and he got presented this award for Danish Motorsport Driver of the Year or something. He just seemed completely baffled. He was like, "Oh, okay, this is cool." It's just a very awkward press conference for him winning this award, which he didn't expect and seemed very spontaneous after a Friday practice session. So
that was interesting. Yeah, do you want me to throw one out there?
Please.
It was actually a message that you sent me. So it was said in the, I think it was in the post-race press conference that it was like, It was a terrific race or something. And then Dan messaged me saying, terrific show for a blind person who thought Newgarden was having the best drive of all time. Because just of the extent to which the commentators were going absolutely nuts about the fact that Newgarden had gone onto a 3-stop strategy and was like 1.5 seconds faster a lap in clean air, except for the fact that this was going to be like the most outlandish and miraculous thing if he actually pulled it off. And the fact that he ends up finishing 14th. So that cracked me up.
Oh, good. My humor is good. Another press conference one was at the end of Palou's victory press conference. It feels like there's always something funny in Palou's press conferences. But anyway, this was the latest one in a sequence of highlights of him and strategist Barry Wanzer were being asked about being Swifties, and somehow the whole paddock had been leaked that they had planned some kind of dance or song if Palou had won.
Taylor Swift's "Fate of Ophelia," the song, and I think this had come from Barry Wanzer's wife, possibly. That this was a thing.
Apparently he sent like one Instagram reel or something to somebody, and apparently it blown up into a massive thing. So we'll play the clip in shortly. Barry Wanzer did this Taylor Swift kind of dance song thing for the 10 team, and Palou kind of tried to join in, pretending he didn't know what it was all about.
Yeah,
I feel like
quite
he kind of
reluctant.
did. Yeah, reluctant. There was a bit of peer pressure going on for him to perform this, but it was good entertainment.
That takes the cake for me. As much as it was a terrific show for a blind person who thought Newgarden was having the best drive ever. That's number one for me. So here it is. We'll play it in now, which it's probably better for YouTube viewers, to be honest, than Spotify listeners, because you won't be able to hear the dance, but it's good fun.
Guys, congratulations. One last thing, I understand you guys are big Swifties, is that right? Big Taylor Swift fans, and have been working on a Fate of Ophelia dance or something like that? Is that?
Who told you?
Is that? Huh?
Who told you that?
Huh? Is this accurate or no? I don't know.
I sent one person like a Instagram video that was hysterical. Now all of a sudden we're Swifties.
Who told you?
Huh? It's all around the paddock, man. I don't know what you're talking about.
Wife.
Everybody's been talking
Your
about
wife.
You do it? Can you do it?
She's not here. Well, she's here, but not right here. But yes, it could be.
No?
Lori?
Well, we did not work on anything.
I think I heard Barry was working on it, though. No?
We need to work. We need to deliver because we said we will, but not now.
Well,
I'm not ready. I'm.
What do you know what to do?
Not now. You do? No. I'm not ready.
I mean, we're all sitting here waiting for this to happen.
I'm very nervous right now.
No?
Well, I'm not doing it unless you're doing it.
It looks like you are ready. No.
I did it like as a joke. I'm not like.
I don't even know. I'm not ready. I just had a race. It's been a very long day. I
hear you. Like, I'm pretty tired.
I'm very tired.
You understand? There are hundreds of people here that are disappointed that you are not doing this now.
I don't even know. I don't even know what to do.
I think it's something like keep at 100 on the land, the sea, the sky. Pledge allegiance to your hand, your team, your vibe. How's that?
Close enough. We'll take it. Whew. All right, guys, congratulations.
Lori?
Stick around, Barry. You're welcome to leave.
Hello, everybody. It's me from the future. Now, when recording yesterday's episode, both myself and Archie completely forgot to talk about the Fast 6 predicted tournament and the Podium predicted tournament. So I'm here post-recording to give you an update on both championships, just so you don't leave Long Beach confused as to what's happened. We did forget, but don't worry, it is in this segment. So we're going to start off with the Podium predicted tournament. Very common theme here, as we'll see shortly. Not a very high scoring week, probably the lowest scoring week we've actually seen all season, and you'll see why. It's a very common theme. So both myself and Archie went for exactly the same in Kirkwood, Palou, and Power. The Kirkwood Palou option was a very popular choice this week, as we had Will Buxton go for Kirkwood, Palou, and Rossi, and we had the DIVEBOMB riders go for Kirkwood, Palou, and O'Ward, all of them earning 2 points for Palou's second place finish. Tom Game was the other person to predict Kirkwood to be victorious, as he went for Kirkwood, Power, but put Palou in third, giving him only 1 point. The fans went for Power, Kirkwood, and Palou. Again, third place for Palou gets him 1 point. But the highest scorer this week was the only person to predict Álex Palou to win, was our good friend James, who went for Palou, Ericsson, and Kirkwood. So of our 7 players, everybody went for Palou and Kirkwood. It just depended who your third person was. So not the most entertaining of weeks, but 3 points for James, 2 points for myself, Archie, writers, and Will, and 1 point for Tom and the fans. But Archie still in the lead on 18. I'm one behind in 17. Then we have a whole cluster with the writers, James and Tom, all in 16, and Will and the fans on 15. So everybody is spread by a singular prediction. Just one correct prediction is whatever is spread by 5 races into the year. So the IndyCar Championship is not close, but this certainly is. Let's transition on to the Fast 6 predicted tournament. If you remember, myself and Archie went very, very similar. We both went for Kirkwood, Ericsson, Power, Palou, Malukas, and in a difference, Archie went for Marcus Armstrong. I went for his teammate Felix Rosenqvist, as we remember the Long Beach qualifying demon, which proved correct. I went 4 for 6 with Kirkwood, Palou, Rosenqvist, and Malukas. Obviously, Archie missed out on getting Rosenqvist as he put Armstrong instead. So, looking in the overall picture there, I am now on 15 points. Archie's on 13 points. So I extend my lead slightly, 5 races into the year. But as we said, all very close, all very much to play for. Now, back to our previous recording. Sorry for forgetting. Hope you enjoy the rest of the episode. So we've got 2 more things we want to touch on. The first one being the qualifying format. Obviously, IndyCar announced prior to the weekend, which I don't think we mentioned yet, but they're going to retain the Fast 6 format that they used at Arlington, which was single car qualifying. We discussed it then when Marcus actually took pole, and obviously a bit of the problem was that because he ran first, despite being slow to the 6 in the Fast 12, it meant he ran first and therefore really helped him get pole position. And we had a few problems with the spectacle, but IndyCar made one significant change, which was that the drivers could now choose what order they would go in. So therefore, the fastest in the Fast 12 could pick at which position the Fast 6 they ran. Second place could then pick from the remaining position, etc., etc., etc. And they're rolling this out at every street this year, so that's going to include Markham, Washington, and Detroit later on in the year. And I think it's fair to say it was a lot more successful this time. Ultimately, qualifying came with a lot more unpredictability and spectacle that they are trying to create through single car qualifying. And the field was a lot closer. You weren't having these massive time differences to what we saw in Arlington. So overall, the format worked a lot better here than it did in Arlington. I was particularly skeptical after Arlington, but I'm a bit more positive minded towards it now after kind of seeing it with this updated format. I don't think necessarily the format really made a difference because it kind of felt like everyone was running pretty similar times anyway, so it didn't really matter where you run. But the single car spectacle that they're trying to create was a lot more successful at Long Beach.
Yeah, I think I was pretty cynical actually when I read that it was coming back. I kind of just rolled my eyes a bit and was like, really? Like it was not very good at Arlington. No, let's be honest. Like there's potential, but I just didn't really enjoy it. Like I might be on my own in that, and people might have really wanted to see it again. And ultimately, I'm glad they did do it again because it was much more close. It was much more unpredictable. Nobody had a clear advantage as such. And I don't know whether that's a product of the format or not, but I think I liked that they added that element where you could decide where to run. Like I'd like the tactical side of it. It just adds a dimension. And I felt like as well, I don't know, I'm not sure they even made any alterations really from a TV side. And to be honest, I would still like to see like sector times included, for instance, to make it easier to follow. But it just felt like it was more fast paced, therefore captivating, therefore was a better TV product naturally. I think possibly Long Beach being a shorter street course than Arlington helped because Arlington felt like it dragged on quite a while, I will be honest. But clearly this showed that when it's executed well, and I don't exactly know what made it so much better this time. Like I'm not necessarily put my finger on it because I don't think it was just the tweaks to the format. It just was better. It was more competitive. And I think, to be honest, it did amplify the products because you get to see, I think as a viewer, it's nice to get to see everyone's laps, even the 6th place lap. And I think Pato O'Ward made this point actually in the press conference after qualifying that, usually there's one guy in the Fast 6 or 2 guys in the Fast 6 who are a cool story because you might not have expected them to be there. And it's quite nice to be able to properly see their lap rather than actually usually just see bits and bobs. You usually see people crossing the line. So that element of it is nice. You actually get to see people qualifying, which is good. And I also think that when the pressure is on and you only have that one shot, it's where it brings the best out of the best drivers. So yeah, I've very much kind of, I came into it as much as I was kind of a bit like, do we really need to do this again? Came into it with an open mind, and I'm glad we did it again because it was good fun.
On sector times, I know it's something that people bring up quite a lot, and I'd like to clarify this actually. I wonder if they're based on the start-finish line, the alternate start-finish line. Because they're based on the start-finish line, it would make sense as to why they didn't use them in qualifying, because it doesn't match up with the sectors. But if it runs off the alternate start-finish line, well, you could use them. So that's something I kind of want to find out on where the sectors are on each track, and if they're based on the alternate start-finish line, the start-finish line, because I mean, it doesn't really make much sense running them off of the start-finish line, because you wouldn't really use sector times in a race format. So I don't know. We have to find out.
It should be an easy fix, if not, I would imagine, like, because they're still able to time the lap. Like, I imagine it can't be that hard.
Yeah. Well, it's just interesting to find out.
I could be completely wrong, but I can't imagine it's that hard.
Yeah, well, I think it's be interesting to find out where those are. Like, ultimately, I think an hour and a half qualifying window is quite long as a viewer, is one thing I would say. Like, at least compared to other series, it feels like IndyCar sessions are quite strung out between each other. Sometimes are long gaps, which is obviously for commercials, and that's understandable. But even in the Fast Six, we're getting breaks for advertisements whilst waiting for cars to run. It's like, ultimately, you know, we understand it's a business and they have to make money on it, but it's a very long television window, and that's something which I feel like as a viewer is also a bit like, you know, it's getting to the length of a race on occasions.
Yeah, I agree. I think you could actually probably further kind of speed up that Fast Six product. Probably not by like massive amounts, but you could probably speed it up a little bit longer by maybe sending the next car out for their warm-up lap while the other car is on their hot lap.
Yeah.
And then they finish, and then immediately you can cut to the next hot lap, and it kind of is just continuous, and then maybe it's cut down enough that you don't need another commercial break. Because that's the thing. I think part of the issue is there's often a really big gap between the different segments as well, because of, again, commercial breaks, and ultimately they can't do anything about that. It's how TV works over in the States, but it's annoying.
Yeah. And as you said, it's a long window. For ultimately, you get what, 2 10-minute sessions, and I can't remember where the ones are, but it adds up. And I suggest that in Arlington, get one car running as soon as one passes the pit lane exit, so that it just speeds up that process, which would be, I think, yeah, a lot better of a process. But look, I'm a lot more open to it. I'm interested to see how it works in Detroit. Like, as you say, I don't think it was that actually drivers picking the order which fixed it, because they all seem like similar pace, which wasn't the case in Arlington. So it'd be interesting to see maybe why it was different, see if that continues in Detroit, for example, which is a very short lap. Washington, I believe, is a short lap. Markham, I have no idea as to how long that lap is. So I'll have to wait and see for those. But yeah, I'm a lot more open to it than I am Arlington, than I was after Arlington. Ultimately, I still didn't see any reason why they needed to change from the original format. Like, I can see why they're trying it, like that promotion of drivers and individuals and characters, but you know, everyone's gonna have a different opinion, so that's fine.
So, Dan, what's your opinion on the race? It was really good, wasn't it?
Yeah. Wasn't quite the 3-week break that it was building up for it, but yeah, I mean, the kind of elephant in the room was it really wasn't a very good race at all. Like, you can summarize basically what happened in a sentence, and I know we make that joke about New Garden, but ultimately, like, it's kind of bad that was such a highlight, because that's kind of what was really going on. Like, you try and pick up key moments in that race. Palou gets awarded lap 2. Nothing really happens in the first pit stop cycle. You kind of have this phantom caution for a bit of debris, which New Garden ran over anyway during that caution, so it proved unnecessary.
I'm not even sure the caution helped anything, to be honest, because actually it denied us a green flag cycle of pit stops where you had the prospect of possibly Palou or someone overcutting other people and having those like kind of exchanges on track where something actually happens on track. But actually that caution literally meant that the only real action we saw from basically lap 2 onwards came in the pits, not even under green flag,
and I think
which is a bit annoying.
With that is that like a pit crew on the race, and yes, that's great on occasions where it's a green flag pit stop battle, but when everybody is in the pits as a team, that race was effectively decided by how good your pit stops, whether your pit crew were during their last pit stop, because it was just so difficult to overtake. Like, we were trying to recall overtakes from the top 10. You've got Palou on O'Ward and Foster dropping down the order, but like otherwise it just seemed so difficult. And like, we had a similar conversation after Barber St. Pete was also very difficult to overtake. Even we're seeing this in the Indy Next races. Arlington wasn't too bad, and that's felt like a better circuit, but even at times was a pretty monotonous race. And yeah, it's just a bit frustrating, really, that it wasn't a good race because we have high standards of the series.
Yeah, it was a procession. I mean, particularly in the lead positions, but I mean, there just weren't that many, like, particularly start portion of the race. There was actually like no real change in the order, and yeah, like there just weren't any real meaningful passes apart from that Palou and O'Ward one. Race being won in the pits, as you say, is, you know, I like that it amplifies the team element of the sport, but it's never like preferable to someone winning the race with a great overtake or having a proper duel for the win on track, which just obviously that didn't happen. And to be honest, there were large points of that race where it felt like, this is a bit harsh, it genuinely felt as exciting as a practice session. Because it just felt like nothing was happening. It didn't feel like anything was going to happen. Like, I know obviously, as we've said, the 3-stop strategy from Newgarden gave glimmers of hope of excitement, but you know, it very soon became obvious that it would have been way too much of a stretch compared to the 2-stopper. And, you know, the 2-stopper being all about fuel saving meant there was very little passing, but also, you know, these alternate tyres this year are very robust. They're not really degrading. Not that Long Beach isn't a very high deg track, but
last year they were pitting after 2 laps.
Yeah, I think that was too extreme, but I think maybe they've gone too far the other way and they need something in the middle. If they're going to mandate these 2 stints on alternates, you know, you can't be able to just run 3 30-lap stints in a race and let the alternates go as far as the primaries. I think it kind of defeats the purpose. But all of this kind of tyres not degrading, fuel saving, just compounds the general issue that I feel like we're seeing on road and street courses where, you know, I feel like it's diminished a bit as a talking point, you know, over the 2 years that it's been a thing. But the cars just look so cumbersome on road and street courses with the hybrid weight. Like, they don't look like they're on the ragged edge anymore, where they are kind of, I don't know, just the racing, just, you don't see much side by side really, like we used to. And I think we're very lucky, frankly, that ovals are so good right now, because I actually think road and street course racing, sadly, and I hate to say this because I'm such a big advocate of IndyCar's rawness and its product, it's become a bit of a hard sell. I can't lie. Like, it's a shame.
I would also say, since the hybrids come in, I know we theorized this a long time ago, but we've really seen Palou's domination accelerate since then. Yes, he won a championship in 2021. Yes, he won a championship in 2023 before the hybrid came in. But since then, it's been a feature which, for the added weights, quite suits his driving style. He's always been very meticulous, very smooth, very controlled, which I feel like a lot of drivers have said was an impact of the hybrid, while someone like O'Ward, who we know traditionally likes to drive very much on the ragged edge and likes to really push the car to its limits. Same for Colton Herta, for example, haven't quite been able to do that in the new cars like they were pre-hybrid, and I wonder if that's something which has really helped accelerate Palou's dominance.
I don't disagree at all. I seem to remember asking Scott Dixon about this last year, and he kind of gave an answer whereby, like, yeah, maybe that was a bit of a factor. I can't remember the specifics of his answer, but I also don't want to kind of use that as a point to detract from what Palou's doing, because ultimately he's adapted in a way that other drivers haven't. I know, okay, maybe it does suit his driving style and the adaptation was a bit easier, but I don't think that should at all detract from what he's doing. And it's certainly not the main reason. Like, it might be a factor in the success, but it's not it's not like the main thing remotely.
But the other thing I think is a bit of a problem for IndyCar is you speak about it being a hard sell, and I think you can sell based on 2 things. You can either sell on it being unpredictable, or you can sell on the product. And at the minute, it's predictable, and that's not to discredit Palou, like you're saying. Like, Palou's brilliance is incredible for people to see, but as a outsider looking in to IndyCar, if you see the same guy winning every week, well, that's not very interesting. But then you've got the product where, okay, Palou might be winning every week, but the racing behind him is absolutely superb and you wouldn't see it anywhere else. But it's not like that at the minute. And like, I feel like you need to sell your product on one of those 2 things. And ultimately, neither of them are, at least starting off this year, for large portions of last year, neither of them are happening right now. And it's kind of a weird situation because Fox are doing really well at promoting the series. I'm seeing lots of new and innovative ideas to really elevate the broadcast, whether that's cameras, whether that's this new Fast 6 format, whatever it may be, there's a clear push in both Fox and IndyCar to really grow and promote the series. And we're seeing that in the television numbers. Okay, Alabama was as good, but the first 3 races of the year had over 1 million viewers in each of them. But since, like, what do you promote your product on? And I feel that's becoming more and more difficult as time goes on, just as races become a bit monotonous like they are currently. And Long Beach hasn't been a great track in recent years. Like, you look at recent Long Beach races, and a lot of them have been a bit like this, maybe a bit more strategy variation, like we saw even last year in Dixon's win in 2024. But it just feels like IndyCar's in a bit of a difficult spot at the minute in regards to trying to promote a series of what can they really promote it on.
Yeah, like you're going to have to sell the series on ovals, but then also IndyCar prides itself on the diversity. And when you get people to tune into road and street course races, and I mean, yesterday, as we record here, like the first thing they will have seen was a pretty shoddy start to the race, to be quite honest. And I know it's a thing typical of Long Beach that it's very hard for the cars to kind of line up 2 by 2 coming out of the hairpin. I'm not sure kind of how you really negate that, but I mean, literally the top 6 weren't even properly lined up really, and they were miles ahead of everyone else. Like, there was a huge gap from who started 6th, Dixon, back to Power in 7th. There was like a massive gap, and it was very scruffy. I'm not entirely sure why it wasn't waved off. Again, like, it is a Long Beach thing, this. I mean, yeah, it's just very hard for them to get lined up. That was a bit scruffy, and it kind of did set the tone into it for, yeah, what was about, I hate to say it, but it's about as bad a race, an IndyCar race, as you could possibly get, really. It just wasn't very good.
Iowa 2024.
Road and street. Let's put that in there.
Street, Iowa 2024.
But yeah, we've got May next, so who cares? And to be fair on that, I must say thank you to everyone for your response to our episode announcing that we're going to Indy. I mean, that has been pretty unbelievable, to be fair. Like, I kind of pinched myself reading all the stuff and all the messages and all the comments. Like, incredible, really. So yeah, bright times ahead. We can forget about Long Beach now. We've got the open test coming up, and then 3 weeks today as we record, we'll be on our way.
I was about to say, our next race review, will it be here or will it be in Indianapolis? I'll probably be here just because the race is on Saturday.
Saturday race. We'll probably record on Saturday or Sunday.
But yeah, no, if you haven't listened to last week's episode, we have an announcement, as Archie's alluded to, with our good friend James Scott. And yeah, very, very much looking forward to it. Thank you for the response. And I know had a few people reach out to us on various social platforms. So obviously, thank you to all of you. And we're very much looking forward to the month of May kicking off. But before then, we do have plenty of content. Obviously, we apologise for missing a week in the last couple of weeks. I was abroad and Archie was finishing at university, hence wasn't a great week for recording. But we will make it up. Between now and the GP, we will have an extra episode. We've got some returning guests planning to come on the show next couple of weeks, which will be fun, as well as a very cool Indy Next driver coming on the show. So stay tuned.
Are we going to say who the Indy Next driver is?
Oh, I don't know, are we?
I think we should. Let's say it. So it's JM Correa, who we spoke to literally just before we were recording this, and I don't like. I've never kind of felt that way after an interview. Really, like I came away very inspired by him. Like, obviously, he was involved in that horrible accident at Spa in 2019, in which we lost the life of Antoine Hubert. And Correa went through 2 years of a lot of, he had up to like 30 surgeries. But he came back and kept racing, and he really gets into that with us, and kind of his life now in Indy Next as he has really rebuilt his career. So yeah, it's a pretty awe-inspiring listen, I would say. So stay tuned for that some point later this week. I'm not entirely sure what day we're going to have that out, but it will be some point Thursday, Friday, I would imagine. So stay tuned.
Yeah, there's no Indy Next debrief from Long Beach because there was no Indy Next, so hopefully that makes up for it. We do have plenty more Indy Next interviews planned throughout the year. You're going to see some even more cool Indy Next stuff come May time, where we'll be able to see a lot of these guys in person for the first time, so it'll make things a lot easier. So stay tuned. We have a lot of content coming up even in May. So at a minimum, you'll probably have a daily podcast, if not even more. So you'll have plenty of content. So hopefully you like our voices enough, because you listen to every episode, you might get a bit fed up of us after 2 weeks. But stay tuned for next week. As we said, we should have a guest on the show, which is going to be really, really cool. And yeah, that is it from Long Beach. As always, thanks very much for watching. Thanks very much for listening. And we'll see you next time.